Hello everyone. Today I will present about my paper. It's titled with the Did Expected Credit Loss or ECL Model is Fair for Banking in the COVID-19 Situations. This is our group of presentations, and we start about the introductions. And this issue comes from the worldwide issue, like the accounting of for lost loan provisions, with the crossing of banks in the world, and we are facing about the COVID-19 pandemics. And especially in Indonesia, we are trying to imply about the PSAK 71s, especially with the methods of expected credit loss, or well known as the ECL, as having the direct implications in the calculation approach for the financial institutions. So the ECL model is from the PSAK 71s, is giving accounting guidance for the financial instrument valuations. The valuation is following the three recommendations using the amortized cost, the fair value through the other comprehensive income, and the fair value through the profit and loss. And in this PSAK 71 is also welcoming about the impairment model based on the ECL, that we have the 12-month ECL or the lifetime ECL. If your company is thinking that you can tackle about the loss in the 12 month, you can use with the 12 month of ECLs. But if you cannot tackle your loss provisions, you can use with the lifetime ECL. And what about the ECL measurements? The PSAK 71 is purposely designed for the forward-looking, so they will be used about the future value for valuations. And for banking, when you recognize about lifetime ECL, it means that you have a significant increase in credit risk. And how about the calculation of the credit loss or the loss provisions? They're using about discounted cash flow with a shortfall scenario. And also they need a data about the probability of default or probability of fail, the exposure of default or loss, and the loss of gift default. So in the COVID-19, this ECL model is like the blessing in disguise, because the many banks have their scenario on these judgments. Why they make a scenario approach for the judgments? Because they need to leveraging about the conditions adapted with the sum of big global banks. Sometimes they use about the consensus economic scenario approach, or in the other one they using but Monte Carlo simulation approach. For the economic variables, they also considering about the unemployment rates, the GDP growth, the house prices, the commodity prices, the short-term interest rates, and the extreme economic conditions like the COVID-19. So for the sum up, the banks need to change their initial risk models in the pandemic. So what about the Indonesia? The Indonesian banks need to comply with the PSAK 71s. That's means about the impairment requirements. It's introducing about the extraordinary measures to alleviate the financial stabilization and the economic impact of the COVID-19. As we know, the COVID-19 crisis is still quite new for Indonesia or for the globals, and their impact in the future economic condition is very hard to predict. So I refer to the Ozili and Aaron in 2020 about the impact of the global economic. The bank the bank regulators have some reactions. They will be choose of smoothing over time, or maybe delaying about the impact of adoption in ECL models. Why they have some reactions? Because they think that the large impact will be happen to the banks. Even the transition comes for incurred loss model to the ECL approach, or they have assisting the banks, especially for the medium banks and the small banks, to strengthen their capital positions. So in the end of our investigations, we have a differentiation about the global financial crisis 2008 and the COVID-19. It's not the same of crisis or global conditions, because they have different in the stability of financial systems, and some have the potential of moral hazards, and also they have the different economic impact. So since COVID-19 are not temporary, The regulator should promote a public guidance to save the banks and suspend the requirement of PSAK 71. In the conclusions, we found that the COVID-19 pandemic is affecting on the financial accounting and reporting for the 2019, 2012 and forwards, and we found that some potential negative consequences for the stability of financial sector, and especially for a financial institutions. Financial instrument like the PSAK 71 is not even entirely clear to make calculations, because the operationalization of ECL is like a black box. We cannot uh, thinking or make sure about the assumptions or the simulations, and the full and informative disclosure is will be challenging in the COVID-19 conditions. In the last of our paper, we express our limitations in these situations, because we only have the access publishing informations like the paper, articles, and the information about the COVID-19. So it could make an incomplete descriptions about the various behaviors for the bank regulator on maybe for the investor. And the COVID-19 crisis is still continuing. We cannot make final decisions, because the crisis will be impact on the relationship between the accounting standard setter maybe and the banking regulators. Thank you for your suggestions.